Thank you for listening to My Pain Web. Despite all that modern medicine offers, chronic pain often worsens and becomes more complicated over time. Connecting to My Pain Web empowers you to take charge of your chronic pain. We'll help you achieve some quality of life as you face your own obstacles of living with chronic pain. You are listening to My Pain Web, podcast episode 16, Chronic Pain and Litigation. Today we're talking about the question, what to do if your chronic pain is the result of an injury caused by or through the action of another. So let's get started. Hey everybody, Steve Connick here. Welcome to My Pain Web podcast. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The My Pain Web podcast is the place where we talk about what it means to be suffering in a pain web. We listen, we share, we connect, we clarify, we cry, and we laugh. Together, we empower and motivate to create confidence, worth, and self-esteem. My Pain Web helps you achieve a quality of life as you face the obstacles of living with chronic pain. You can connect to many chronic pain details and information at mypainweb.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow me on Twitter at mypainweb and Facebook. All links are in the show notes. Now, today's show discusses what to do if your chronic pain is the result of an injury caused by or through the action or actions of another. If your chronic pain is the result of an injury caused by or through the action or actions of another, then you have every right to pursue litigation to protect yourself and your family. You see, My Pain Web offers my opinion as it relates to my own experience involving a personal injury claim. I am not an attorney, I'm not a paralegal, or other professional within the litigation industry. I have no experience involving medical malpractice claims. I do offer my experience as a guide to help you, the chronic pain patient, understand the complicated and frustrating strand litigation has within your pain web. Why litigation? We all have observed the great debate over litigation. The right to sue for injuries should be limited, or the right to sue for injuries should not be limited. Litigation, in my opinion, has been dramatized and fanatized from both fiction and nonfiction perspectives in books, TV, movies, news, and the media. Litigation from a My Pain Web perspective is nothing like that at all. If you believe it is, then you will be surely disappointed. You see, litigation is a way to resolve liability caused by someone else and or their action or actions, whether accidental or intentional, resulting in an injury or injuries and ultimately causing your chronic pain. You see, my initial injury was the result of a Cybex lat pull-down machine breaking as I was in the process of using it while at a local fitness center. This resulted in a severe low back injury. If you want more specifics about my experience and my initial injury, just go to mypainweb.com and click on the timeline, and that will explain the incident, the injuries, and the subsequent necessary medical interventions for my injuries. Now, since I was unable to perform my job, I quickly found myself on short-term disability, then followed by what's called long-term disability. As a result, my income was drastically reduced. I then had to file for a medical leave of absence from my employer. Now, my new temporary career at this time was to follow doctor's orders to the letter, with the hope that they could fix my low back injuries, allowing a return to work, a return to my routine, and restoring my quality of life. A little bit further along, approximately 6 months after my first lumbar surgery, my orthopedic surgeon released me back to work on a full-time basis. While still healing, still in some pain, and continuing physical therapy, I was so thankful to put this whole bad episode behind me and finally move on with my life. Now, I'm going to explain a few more minutes here because this is the basis for the litigation, and you may find yourself in a similar situation, or you may be able to use this to help you understand what options you may have. Now, less than a year later, I was, like I said, back at work, and I was attending a meeting for my company when the chair I was sitting in broke, which caused me to fall directly onto the still healing lumbar fusion site. The result was further injury along with the inability to perform my job and collect my paycheck. A leave of absence from my employer was once again required, along with being placed on workers' compensation in an effort to collect just a small percentage of my earnings and to assist in paying my medical bills. After a short period of time, it became my financial responsibility to pay 100% of my health premiums in order to keep my health insurance coverage. Now, my orthopedic surgeon once again returned me back to work on a full-time basis, approximately 6 months after my second lumbar fusion surgery. However, my employer chose not, and I'm going to repeat this, my employer at the time chose not to fulfill their obligation to return me to my previous position. Instead, they offered me a take-it-or-leave-it position in another state for less salary, which would force me to relocate. What did I do? Well, I chose instead to find new employment elsewhere. Now, at this point, I felt I had a legitimate legal claim as my injuries and continued pain were both the direct result of the first incident involving the Cybex lat pull-down machine breaking while using it at the fitness center, and then the subsequent broken chair incident causing me to fall onto my lumbar fusion site. So that's enough of my specific background. You may have a similar or even more complicated background, which was the result of your chronic pain. So you may be thinking like I was thinking, do I need a lawyer? The answer, yes. Unless you choose small claims court as an option, which you can do on your own with some guidance, then you will need a lawyer. Even if the other side agrees they are liable and at fault for causing your injury, you must still prove your case. Furthermore, there is no way for you to know the value of your personal injury claim. You see, small claims court indicates a limit of your claim on awards, usually between $1,000 and $5,000. Now, if you feel your claim is greater than the small claims court limit, then you most likely need to utilize the regular court system. Now, I came across a very interesting website called drugwatch.com. You can find their link at mypainweb.com. Just go to the PainWeb Help section and then scroll down and click the litigation button. And then there you will see this particular website. Now, drugwatch.com offers assistance to individuals who feel they have been harmed by either medications and or surgically implanted medical devices. Now, I've not used them personally, but the patient advocates at drugwatch.com can help you understand your options given your specific situation. Now, they cannot advise on all possible causes of your chronic pain, but if you believe your chronic pain is as a result or partly as a result of medications or medical implanted devices, then drugwatch.com may be of some help for you. Now, if you were like me, and there's no question that the thinking is small claims court is too limited given the dollar amounts that they place on the value of a case, my question, which may be like yours, well then, where do I find a lawyer? Well, you can definitely go through these few steps. Recommendations from family and or close friends. You can call and ask for referrals from your local bar association. You can even find a legal journal publication at your local library or through your local bar association. And within these publications, you can find a lot of information about law firms. And then finally, advertisements. Those are some good sources to try and come up with a short list of attorneys for you. Now, don't get too bogged down on trying to make notes or mental notes, because what we're discussing, all of these details can be found on mypainweb.com. So either during our podcast discussion now or afterwards, just go to mypainweb.com and under the PainWeb Help section, click on the litigation button and you can find all these details there. Now, it is important that the attorney you hire has the proven experience and is someone you can trust. If necessary, talk to as many attorneys as it takes to ensure you find the right one. That is absolutely key. You have to trust and have the confidence and feel like that you are hiring the absolute right attorney for you. Now, what happens after you hire the attorney? Well, let me familiarize with you on some of the steps that, quite honestly, are difficult to find unless you've gone through the process. The first step is a consultation. What is that? It's just a first-time meeting with your attorney where you will need to provide all the details of your incident. And that includes the details of the incident itself, any journals or notes of yours that you may have taken over time detailing your situation, any hospital discharge forms, a listing of your doctors, your medications, your medical reports. Hint, hint. On an earlier podcast, we talked about the importance of forms and documentation. So if you want to refresh yourself, go to mypainweb.com and check out the forms section in the PainWeb Help area. And there you will see these specific forms that I talk about being sure you have prepared and accurately updated. You can also, for convenience, just listen to episode 3 podcast on forms, and we can review that with you there as well. So, in addition to the forms, there may be photographs involved, and you may have some information about witnesses. Who saw what? So, at your very first meeting, which is called the consultation, you'll be expected to provide as much detail as you can. Now, at that time, you will most likely sign a fee agreement and what's called a medical authorization form or several medical authorization forms, allowing your attorney to obtain all your medical records. So be sure you ask questions and understand the fee agreement. And then feel free to negotiate any fees within that agreement that you feel is appropriate. Also, be clear on other costs that may be involved to provide these legal services. Things like expert witness fees. How about filing fees, court reporter fees, etc.? So you want to make sure that any other fees it's understood who pays for what and when that is paid for. Now, your attorney should also explain to you that in some cases, disability insurers, which basically would be your short-term disability, long-term disability insurance, and workers' compensation insurance carriers involved with your claim may have the right to file a claim for reimbursement for benefits paid to you. These claims may need to be resolved prior to your settlement and award. All costs should be taken out of the award first before your attorney takes their percentage. That's important. Now, the litigation process itself is incredibly complicated and exhaustive. What does it include? Well, let me just run down the list so you kind of have a running fashion order. First, there's the discovery phase, which includes what they call interrogatories. These are written questions and requests for documents that your attorney prepares on your behalf. Then there's the step of depositions, which is basically formal interviews of various people. Then there will most likely be one, or there could be many independent medical evaluations done documenting your particular medical situation. Now, in my next podcast, episode 17, we'll be talking about chronic pain and disability. And I'll spend some extra time in that podcast talking about the important step of independent medical examinations. Now, if you're already involved at that step and you want to quickly access information about it, then at mypainweb.com, in the PainWeb Help section, click Disability. And in that section, you'll find a lot of useful information about IMEs, which is short for Independent Medical Examination. Now, after that particular discovery phase, you move into what's called the trial itself. What's involved in the trial itself is basically preparation, selecting the jury, opening statements, medical testimony, discussions, evidence about damages, the burden of proof, the defense case, talking about causation, then there's objections, then finally closing arguments, then jury deliberation, and then the verdict with possible appeal. I'm not going to get hung up any more specifically on just running through those specific steps, but there are a few more minutes I want to take here on this process. It's seldom a smooth process. It takes time. Expect many bumps in the road along the way. Communication itself will at times be extremely frustrating. See, your attorney cannot answer calls from you every time you have a question. They are obligated to communicate in a timely manner and respond to reasonable requests for information from us. You can expect competent representation and courteous treatment while they aggressively pursue your claim. What I did as a standard practice, and I suggest you do as well, ask for copies of every piece of paper that your attorney sends out on your behalf. including those that are sent to and from the insurance company letters and medical records, you need to be sure that everything that is being sent and received is accurate. And then you also need to be sure that you keep your attorney current on all your medical interventions. I'm going to hint again, keeping up those mypainweb forms is an easy way to do this ongoing. Now, in the event you find yourself dissatisfied with your attorney, here's what I recommend you do. Send a strongly worded letter stating clearly that you are unhappy. And in most cases, you will get a proper response. Now, if you don't get a satisfactory response, then it may be time to hire a new attorney. But keep in mind that your previous attorney will have to send your complete file to your new attorney. So it comes back to making sure you spend extra time up front so that you hire the right attorney for you the first time out. Now, most personal injury cases are resolved through something called settlement rather than going to trial. So though I went through the whole process of what's involved in a trial, and if you're in a litigation situation because of your chronic pain, and yours is definitely in a trial situation, then you're already familiar with the trial process. If you're just starting out or you feel you need to initiate this step of litigation, understand from the very beginning, it's very, very likely that your case will be solved through a settlement process rather than going through the entire trial process. Now, what still happens through settlement is the entire discovery phase itself. Okay? That's where we talked about the interrogatories, the depositions, and the important independent medical examinations. All that still is accurate for going through settlement as well. Most attorneys, insurance companies, and judges prefer settlement. See, the settlement process usually takes place when all the medical treatments have been completed. The settlement process is where both sides make offers to settle the claim for a dollar amount. So let me repeat that. See, most attorneys, the ones that represent you and the ones that represent the other side, along with the judges, everybody prefers the settlement approach. Why? Because it circumvents the additional time and expense of going through the actual trial process. So the settlement process usually takes place when all of your medical treatments have been completed. Pretty much you're at the end of the road in terms of what's happening with your medical situation. Now, the settlement process is where both sides basically make offers to settle the claim for a dollar amount. Now, your attorney will explain the value of your case based upon your damages, and we're talking about physical damages, psychological damages, financial damages, and pain and suffering. Now, again, most people, when they think litigation, want to go right to this step. What is the value of my case? This needs to be at the end of your concern list, because this is a process. And part of this whole process of defining what your case is worth cannot be done until all these other steps have been concluded. So again, your attorney will explain the value of your case based upon all those damages. Don't be desperate to settle. This particular step This particular method of resolution is all about negotiating, and every effort will be made by the other side to minimize your damages, while at the same time placing the bulk of the liability on you in an effort to reduce the settlement amount. Now keep in mind that the settlement process itself can take years. I personally found this litigation strand within mypainweb to be incredibly frustrating and challenging as my chronic pain continued to worsen. Ultimately, the litigation concludes. For me, like most personal injury litigants, the only real decision was to resolve this through settlement. Now, what do I mean by that statement? It may be your attorneys will strongly encourage you to settle your litigation through this settlement process. Now, it is your decision to either accept settlement or reject it and ask for the actual trial by jury process. Now, I could have done that. Many others could have done that. Your specific attorneys can address the pros and cons for both. For me, my understanding that pursuing the trial by jury, there is a possibility that even if the verdict from the jury is in your favor or in my favor, and they award a record sum of money, in all probability, the other side will do one thing in that case. They will appeal it. And guess what? During the appeal process, there is no award. You basically get zero until the appeal is settled. And the appeal itself could take many, many years. So this is a very tough piece of this litigation strand within the pain web. Going through settlement and trying to get a fair resolution, or taking your chances through the court system with a lot of other complication with some very questionable outcome. It may also be that if you go through the trial process, that particular jury may not favor your legitimate case and come back with an award that is very below your expectations. So that's a possibility as well. Hence, you can see litigation is extremely complicating and frustrating. So as I mentioned, for me, like many of those that are seeking or have gone through or maybe looking for personal injury litigation, the decision about resolving pretty much comes down to the settlement route. Now, when my settlement was reached, you know what? There was no fanfare. There was no parade. Kind of like what we see on TV and in the movies about the foreman of the jury reading the verdict. There's none of that. Basically, the feeling I had was that I just got paid a few bucks for being given a life of chronic pain and loss of quality of life. Very anticlimactic, to say the least. My vision of a trial with a judge presiding over my case, watching as my attorney scolds the defense for their negligence resulting in my injuries, never came to be. And as I mentioned before, there was no jury reading of the verdict, and in some ways there was no closure. Essentially, I feel like I was just paid a few dollars to go away. I had thought it's most appropriate to share this with you in this podcast as a way to help you further control your pain web, trying to also give you more quality of life in the process. So if you want more information and details on chronic pain and litigation, again, just visit mypainweb.com. Please feel free to send me your questions or comments, especially those pertaining to if you're in this litigation strand of your pain web, or if it's a step that you feel you need to take and you still have questions. Send them along to me in an email at help@mypainweb.com. You can also post your comment on my PainWeb Facebook or on Twitter at mypainweb. Thanks for listening, and remember, some quality of life can exist with chronic pain. I appreciate our time today, and I look forward to chatting with you real soon. Thanks, and take care.